For me, it's interesting. I up until last couple of years, social media was for me the learning opportunity. I used it for learning and the ability to just engage and reach out to people. To me was inspiring. I wasn't limited by borders, or I could tweet at my mentors and leaders that I was looking for, and when they were tweeting me back, to me I just found so much value in that. And so I like to think of it as a community. And I not only am I grateful for a lot of my career success thanks to Twitter relationships. But I'm a partner at a company called BroadSuite, and we actually met on Twitter, and we met for the first time face to face after 4 months working together as partners 2 days ago. So as crazy as that is, it was a partnership made on Twitter, and to me, it's I love it. It's my favorite platform by far. So, I think the fire hose element of it is a attractive one where there's no filtering. And, Facebook, I don't really know what my feed looks like, even for a brand. Dynamically figuring out who's seeing your content. And although it's only 140 characters, it's very real. It's very real time. And, the people that are really finding the value are using some of that data, some of those, the hashtag analytics, and taking things that we're going to talk about later on and taking those to the next level by really humanizing the conversations. And on Twitter, that's so easy to do compared to Facebook and even Google Plus still have some of these email type engagement feel where I think Twitter has that real time active conversation element. So, I think that, I actually I had a long discussion with Tom, one of the guys from Twitter at the IBM event I was at this week. And, one of the big things is when someone's new getting on Twitter, it is overwhelming, a hashtag. But one of the things to remember is you don't have to see every tweet. And there's things like lists and understanding that, to search hashtags and also putting, following people that you can provide value in. I think a lot of times the mistake is you don't follow enough people, and so then you're either overwhelmed by people that tweet too much. I even go out of my way sometimes telling people that if they're not following very many people, I apologize that they have to see my avatar so much because, I've tweeted at a higher rate. I'm like, I would understand if you, but, like if you can add people to a list and you can have private and public lists. I think lists are probably one of the most underutilized thing on Twitter. And to me, they're a game changer. I probably have 25 to 30 public lists and probably more than that on private ones where I have my competition. I have and for me, I can go on there really quickly and see everything that I put in that list, what they tweeted over the last recent time frame. And so and then when you go to an event, you can actually track those things. So I think the big part now is you find there's so much more value in Twitter if you're listening. So yeah, I like to think each character is extremely important. So you want to utilize those characters with care. But one of the things is if you treat it like a conversation less than a communication, you can really find value in it there. So I think part of it is really although there's so many people and there's so many people you're following and it's such a fast time, I like to think of almost all of my tweets and my engagement as a one-to-one conversation just done in a public area. So I caveat that with I don't tweet or share anything that I'm not comfortable with my mom seeing. I'm a mama's boy, so if I'm not going to post anything that I wouldn't be comfortable with her seeing in the first place. So I think that's something that a lot of times people get overwhelmed and they're too afraid to share certain things. But if you treat it like a conversation, not communication, you'll start seeing that value of engagement rather than just another spamming of a marketing spiel or such. So I think part of it is, and I think part of it, it humanizes you as well because you have to be creative. You can't, give too much of a spiel. You also, because Twitter is out there, you can't hold back. You have to really, what you put out there is the concrete thing. So you can't be fake because it's hard to be fake. You'll almost get exposed, and I think too often we use automation as an excuse, then we don't need to engage. And you can use automation to be more productive, but the engagement still has to be you yourself. It has to be raw. So sharing content on a schedule is a great thing, but when someone comments back about that content, not only you should have read that content, but you should be engaging them in a conversation, not just having an automatic reply or automatic DM that says thanks for those follow. Like, those are the things where you're missing out on humanizing the conversation, and it just turns into an automated marketing communication channel instead of true. You can't take the word social out of social media, and I think that's important. So, I think the first part about it is and you hit a really good point there where you were talking about, my philosophy on social is I call it, I use the hashtag show you care. Because to me, going above and beyond, researching, understanding what someone else is sharing, you don't go into a room the first time you meet them and just throw your business cards in the middle of the room and walk out. You're going to create conversations, dialogue. You're going to do a little bit of your research. So when you show your care, you kind of take it to the next step. And I know one of my favorites, Jay Bear, always says, he always, content that help, share content that help. No one's going to say you're helping too much. And as a salesperson, you don't sell on Twitter. You're going to help provide value, and you're going to create that relationship to where the sale can happen almost naturally. And it's that, I'm a big believer in Gary Vaynerchuk as well. It's that jabbing and jabbing and jabbing, that is you're giving and providing value. You're giving without asking, hey, you have to go look at my link. And eventually, you providing that value, they're going to start sharing your content, looking into what you're doing more without you ever having to initially make that ask. So I think it starts with the giving. So I think a big part of that is you need to understand the conversation, but you should be tracking that and understanding. Like, I like to think of, there's social CRM tools that exist now, but you know each one of these digital conversations, each time of these Twitter back and forth, that's a stepping stone. And I think too often we try to just completely jump from Twitter onto LinkedIn, or maybe we go directly to email. And we start going right to that sale there. And part of it is, if you build up that conversation, I like to think when you meet in person the first time, it's not a handshake, it's a hug, because you've created that much of a relationship. So when you do that on Twitter, maybe that first phone call when you DM them after having a bunch of things and saying, hey, I think I'd like to get on a call with you and show you our product. There, not only does that call go much smoother because you have that relationship, but it's not like that awkward, like, oh, I have to see how salesy he's going to get, or I don't really trust him, or I don't have a relationship. You already have built and established that relationship between the two. So there's some people that can actually make that sale on Twitter because they've spent such a long time on engaging, but there is no easy button when it comes to social relationships, and it must be thought of as a tool, because just like everything in sales, everything takes a lot of work. So that's a great one. I love that question because I often say it costs no money to hit the retweet button or the favorite button, and too often they're underutilized. When you're retweeting and sharing someone else's content, you're showing that you're listening and paying attention. It goes into my show you care element. And so when you're doing those things, you're sharing it and providing value. Why is someone going to share your content if you're not willing to share theirs first? Or why is someone going to have a conversation with you if you're not listening and building that relationship? And sometimes it's as easy as going to their profile and seeing what they share. If it's Wall Street Journal articles, if they're sharing, maybe they're a big Richard Branson fan, or they follow Jay Bear or some of the leaders that are out there, from a content perspective, and then creating a common ground. And it's, like I said, retweeting, I think, is one of those things that you start doing it yourself for them before ever expecting someone to do it for you. So I think, people follow you for you. They're not following you so you just reshare all the same, titles and all the same input. They could already get that in an RSS feed. And I really stress the importance of adding your own insight. So if you're sharing something, provide your input. Add a little bit of flavor. Maybe add a picture. Pictures are really powerful, especially on Twitter now, because tools like Hootsuite actually embed the pictures inside of their tools now. And so when you're on Twitter and you're sharing a picture instead of just sharing a link, or you're adding a little bit of value by sharing, hey, with my experience in this, now people actually have a reason to engage you further, rather than just, you have to stand out from the noise, because if not, you're just going to be continue to be, blend in with the rest of your news feed. So I mean, I think lurking is probably the most common thing people do on Twitter. And it's really like, it is like a little bit of eavesdropping, or you're listening to all the different things going on. But part of it is, there's a reason they're engaging there on Twitter, not doing it somewhere private. So oftentimes people are afraid to engage because they don't want to interrupt. But that's really why you're doing it on Twitter. So by jumping in there, saying, even like saying, hey, excuse me, I love this conversation, I wanted to add this value. Oftentimes if you show that you're kind and jumping in, or you even hijacking a hashtag, like, hijacking has such a bad connotation to it. But for me, if you're not selling on there, if you're helping, if like I said, no one's going to say you're helping me too much. So if you jump into a conversation and provide value, you're never going to have someone complain. And I think that's really where the hack is. You have to jump into the conversation and provide value. Don't just drop a link or say, hey, yeah, you must be following me because I A, B, and C. So, I like to say there is no excuse anymore to say you don't have feedback, you don't know what your customers want. All of the data exists today. You're just not listening for it or looking for it in the right way. So searching for hashtag, listening, using you can even using tools to help you solve a problem or a strategy. If you come at it from the idea that okay, I want to know what people are saying, the data is there. So the key is listening. And sometimes you're going to hear what you don't want to hear, but isn't that really the value you want to provide? I mean, part of that is how do you know what content to even create or what to share? Like you said when you were explaining your philosophy on how you're getting your followers to watch a Hangout, and I think Hangouts are a great addition to Twitter. I do that with my social selling hour on Mondays. I do a Hangout and a chat as well, and I think the fact that you were going out of your way to find people that were interested, but you were also finding the right time to engage them. I mean, that's three levels of showing you care. You could have just spammed every person in your newsfeed and added them to your thing, but you went out of your way to provide value for them, and that's the true value there. So using all that data, listening, implementing some of these, searching for a hashtag, searching for a common phrase, searching for your company's name misspelled. Something like that can provide very good value because maybe you're not getting the notifications, but someone's reaching out and needing help, and you can provide value there. No, I couldn't agree more that you should attend every one of your industry's events. And they often look at me like they're crazy. I'm like, no, you attend them online and digitally because searching that hashtag, creating a column for it, you not only are listening, but all of the people that are at that event are probably people that are interested in the similar topic, following them. That's a great way to find who, people ask, who do I follow? Well, if your industry is having an event, so if you're in the technology industry and there's a technology event, follow that hashtag, see who's using it, and follow those people because apparently you have just there alone. And you were asking about starting a conversation. That's a great way to start a conversation. Oh, I wish I was at this event. How's that event going? Have you heard from this speaker? And right there you have a conversation. You're not just jumping into the person's newsfeed. So I think part of it comes back to it has to be truly an honest give. You have to actually not want anything in return, and that includes like even a thank you back because the people that really get the value on Twitter, they're gonna say thank you, they're gonna engage you back in a conversation, but you can't expect that. So when you're asking for something, don't follow it up with a DM and say, hey, you didn't message me back after I said thank you. Like that's where it takes away from it. So I think and actually I have like an interesting twist on that where I really feel that if you really want to provide value, one of the things I love to do is if someone retweets or shares my content, replying back and saying thank you is great. But why don't I usually click on their name, look in their newsfeed, and share something of theirs? I actually really do like to give that right back because now I am kind of helping them without me ever asking for anything else. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the key. I mean, and really, I mean, the customer feedback is there. You have actually your competitors' feedback, and too often people are worried about, oh, am I sharing my competitive advantage? Well, really, the people that are going to invest in time in you and want to listen to you, that you need to provide that value and listen first. So part of that is if you're curious about what they think about even your competitors' tool, search for those things and listen to see what people are saying. And then the other element of that is you have to track it and provide. I use a hashtag. My other hashtag I always used to like to use, I say screenshot awesomeness. So when you see anything going on, if you take screenshots or you record what is happening out there, so maybe you can build up a story over a long period of time that whenever that person decides to leave your competitor, they're looking for someone, you have all this backstory that you've now saved, and they're like, wow, they cared about me that much for that long. This is someone I want to listen to. So I think those are kind of a great way to really play the long game, but throughout the time, kind of screenshotting and capturing those little moments. So I think that's a big one for me because I believe there's a difference between transparency and oversharing, and too often we assume one and the same. And for me, transparency doesn't make you a trusting person, but it gives them an opportunity, a window into seeing who you truly are. But if you're on there to build a relationship, you're you don't want to spark controversy or talk about something that might be sensitive to other people. So I like to call it respect others' news feed and respect others' opinions. The world, I think we often have dealt with bullies and people that aren't kind. And the nice part about Twitter is we control who we hear from. The unfollow button is powerful. So don't give people a reason to unfollow you, because if you do, it's very easy to get rid of a bully or someone that is not, I can quickly dissolve your content from my feed with one click of one button. And that's something you really have to take into account with everything you share. Respect not only their news feed, but respect the idea of what you're sharing and who you're sharing it with. I'd say the first thing I would say, I'd say find, think about your story. So the first thing I want you to do is write down what your story is. And if you don't know what your story is, the best people to tell you what your story is are your followers. So oftentimes, if you're not sure what it is, you can make a simple ask. You'll be amazed asking an open-ended question or asking for feedback how much your followers love that. So I recommend the first thing you do is ask your followers for input or feedback, or even one of the things a lot of people ask me is I want to create a perfect bio. Ask your followers what they would love to see in your bio, or why they decided. I use the line I talk fast, I tweet faster, and actually it was someone that actually suggested that as I was giving a keynote presentation. They said, "Wow, you do talk fast, but you tweet actually faster than you talk." And I added that to my byline, and that usually is a great conversation starter, and that's something you can do today. And then another thing I think is, treat Twitter like one-to-one conversations. So reach out to people in your newsfeed that are sharing great content and thank them. You don't have to ask anything for a return. So when you get off this call, you're on Twitter later tonight, or even on you're on Twitter the next time. If someone's content is really providing you value, let them know that. It's amazing. I create and share a lot of content. I spend a lot of time curating and finding great content. And when I hear someone say, "Man, I've used your content to get things approved with my manager," not only does that make my day, but it also, I add you to a list. I'm now listening because the fact that I know that I was providing you value, I'm gonna start listening to you a little bit more to find out what other content I can share. So I think that would be the number 2 one, and I'd say the third one is I'm a big fan on what you're doing here. I think you guys, the fact that you guys as a brand are doing it right. You're creating a conversation. You're not pushing sales or pushing what your agenda is. You're bringing the thought leaders in, talk about a topic, educate. You're providing that value by educating your community, and that's what we all have to focus on. Educate, share values, and really things like this. Not only am I a fan, but will be sharing your content and sharing and following you guys throughout the time, because I know that you care about the community, not just bottom line. And I think that's the difference for too many brands. Think of it with what's my ROI, and if you're thinking about social that way, you're only think of it as communication, not conversation. No, I mean, everyone starts with 0 followers. I always laugh because when you first start on Twitter, I was reading a study that so many people get on and never actually send a tweet. There's some crazy number, like a very high percentage. And part of that was because they don't know who to follow. And when you have 0 followers, you only can go up. And the follower count number never really matters. Because if you think of it this way, if you have 2 followers and you provide those 2 followers value, that's a win. That's something, you have to treat it like a tool and invest your time in it. That's part of the problem. You can't, if you're not going to mail in a business meeting that you're going to have face to face, you can't mail in your Twitter engagement when you do that. So you have to invest the time, listen, and growing your followers should be less of importance. You should start following people yourself to learn and share their information. Your follower numbers will grow organically because of that. Well, the easiest way is get him on it. The easiest way to provide value is, I always like to say, is if my boss is a big fan of Richard Branson, or my boss loves Mark Cuban's methodology, I show them reports or show them the Twitter feed of Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban tweets 100 times a day. Someone like Mark Andreessen, a very big thought leader in the venture capitalist space, is on Twitter nonstop. When you show your boss that it's not just, I always joke that millennial is a state of mind. It's a mindset. It's not a year you were born. And so it's not just millennials sitting on Twitter. And the other thing about it is, I use that term screenshot awesomeness because you have to record when good things and bad things and all the things happen, because how can you tell the story of providing value over a long time when someone says, hey Brian, you've been on social for 30 days, what have you done lately? You can kind of give your story. I've engaged, these are the people. But if I had a portfolio of all these different, someone thanking me for content, hey Brian, you just made my day, this is the best article I wrote, you build all of those and you show them that, not only are they going to say, okay, I agree with you, they're going to say, hey, I want you to teach me. And I think that's a big win, is, teach your brand. You even teach your boss the value of a personal brand. That'll get you far. That is a good one. I like that one. And I often say, people are like, well, I don't even know what hashtag to follow. And we covered hashtags at events, and we covered, but part of it is, I like using lists, and I build people into lists, and I slowly learn from them. But social thing takes a lot of work, and so does content curation. So part of that, identifying someone is, listen to the popular hashtags, listen to the thought leaders. One of the other things that's a good one is, if you are in your industry and you're sharing someone's specific thought leader, or a industry or Wall Street Journal's content, see who else is sharing Wall Street Journal's content, because you'll be amazed. Like, those are people that have a similar philosophy and similar beliefs. So that's one of the great ways. The other one for me a lot of times is, if you just listen to your open feed, just openly listen. You don't even have to worry about sending a tweet, and just sit back. There's so much information there that you can learn. Oh, that's a good one. I get that actually question a lot. I with the social selling, from sales perspective, if you think of it this way, I mean, you're not going to give away your intellectual property, but if you're providing content, you're explaining how you're doing something. If someone's going to take that and do it their own, or do it themselves, they're not the customer you wanted in the first place, right? The customer you want in the first place is going to go, wow, these people are doing it right. I need to reach out to them. So part of it is, I think if you provide value and you help along the way, the end game comes. So I think too often we're looking for those quick wins. And I ask, when someone asks me, like, how do I prove value? How do you prove value of going to a happy hour and having drinks with, your clients or your customers or your partners has value? Like, okay, I bought this many drinks. Do you tie drinks to the amount of sales leads there? I mean, I think those kind of things we have to remember when we're talking social selling on Twitter. Ooh, well, yes, as I'm very the APAC region is a very booming, growing network on social. And one of the things I actually recommend a lot of the people that I work with and provide strategy is, I actually tweet when I sleep. That's like my thing there is I find great content, and I want to share that with people that are in different time zones. So I do a lot of work with the teams like in Australia and in the APAC region. So I share content during their active hours. So that's part of something you have to think about. Just because someone isn't in the exact time zone as you today, Twitter allows us to connect with them. So even tagging someone in a piece of content so that they see it when they're awake, in a different region, that's another great one. But you also have to understand, take into account culture of things. So Asia is going to handle things a little bit different. So when you're having conversations, you have to take that into account as well. So understand the dialogue, understand how a personal brand might be perceived differently. We actually had on Social Selling Hour, our SS Hour, we had 2 weeks ago, we had someone from the APAC region come on and was telling us personal branding was something that is slowly growing there, not like it is in the US. So, do a little bit of research, but I also recommend tweeting when you're sleeping. So my friend Ted Rubin, I'm a big fan of Ted Rubin. I've been blessed that his book, and he preaches return on relationship. R on R is his hashtag that he uses. And one of his things always says is, a sale might close, but a relationship never does. So even when the sales closes, you want to be listening to them, and oftentimes even engaging them even further, because your best customers and the people you should treat the best are the ones that keep your lights on and your paycheck coming. Without them, you're not going to have to worry about future ones. So I think I actually recommend even putting them in a list and paying even more attention after the sale closes.